music. So. All right, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of your HMG Weekly Wrap-Up. I am your host, Adam Bird, and you guys will notice that there's someone far more better looking than I on the screen with me today. We got a special guest. I'm super excited to have him on, Mr. Joel Evan. Joel, what's up, brother? How are you?
Let's go, buddy. I'm excited. Ready to rock and roll.
I love it. I love it. We got a special topic for you guys today. We're going to be talking about parenting and stuff like that. But before we dive into that, you all know what I like to do. I like to kind of stir the pot a little bit. I like to talk a little bit about some headlines that I found interesting that I saw in the news this week. We're gonna get into those, and then we're gonna get into the parenting talk, and then we'll find out what you missed on the shows this week. So let's dive into it. Big news coming out of Texas, Oklahoma area. There are the big fires going on down there in the Panhandle right now. The Smokehouse Creek fire is one of several that are burning in Texas currently. Now, this came out like yesterday. They gave an update on this. It is now the largest in the history of the state of Texas. The Texas A&M Forest Service says the fire in Hutchinson County, has burned 1,075,000 acres in the Texas and Oklahoma area, and it's currently about 3% contained. That's unfortunate because if you go down into that area, you look on a map, there's a lot of very, very large ranches down there. Now, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist today, but one could make the argument of, they haven't said how the fire started yet. A couple weeks ago there was a big fire on a what was it, a chicken plant, I think, somewhere where they processed chickens, and now we got ranches. I think one could argue that there's an attack on our food supply chain. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying one could make that argument. That's it. Don't take my word for it. You guys hear me every week. Don't take my word for it. I'm just sharing what I found with you, hoping that you will use in some critical thinking and go out and find this stuff for yourself. Okay. Moving on. White House. I can't even say this with a straight face, man. White House health report claims that Biden is robust. And just like that, we're going to get banned on every social media platform again this week. Presidential physician Dr. Kevin O'Connor released a report this week from Joe Biden's physical, finding that there are no new concerns over his health. No new, I think the key word being new concerns over his health. The president feels well, and this year's physical identified no new concerns, the report said. He also continues to be fit for duty and fully executes the responsibilities without any exemptions or accommodations. Almost believable. Might need some help getting up the stairs. I don't know. Might be an issue there. But he says that he's stable and well controlled. I thought that was an interesting way they put that there. But all in all, he's a very robust 81-year-old man who remains fit and successfully can execute the duties of the president of the United States. Special note on this is Biden did not take a cognitive test as part of the physical. I thought that was pretty important to just mention, throw that out there. I'll let you guys decide out there in the old interweb lands what you think about that particular report. Joel, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think the only thing that always comes to my mind when I see the president is I just feel sorry for him. I just feel I feel how sad that someone didn't take care of his body for all these years, and now he's in his 80s and he looks terrible. And what a travesty to treat your body. You know, they talk about Alzheimer's being like type 3 diabetes. And so, I mean, all of these diseases, you know, I have a big background in holistic health. They're
Yeah.
all preventable when you actually take care of your body. And I just see a guy also who's not living congruent with what he says versus who he is. And so I always just find it very interesting when I see people that are fake and they're on the spotlight. And so it's no surprise to me to see him in detrimental health because of just his actions, and his words aren't congruent with who he says he is. So there's no shock for me. But man, you know, and I know we're going to talk about parenting later. And I think one big thing that always comes to me is I just think about his kids, you know, and there was all the news about Hunter in the news, and there's always this sensationalism you can say about like, oh my God, what a cover up and all these things. But really where my mind went was how sad, like how pathetic of a father that you let your son like get this way, and that you weren't a leader for him, and that you let him down. And of course, Hunter has his own issues. Like we can't play that, but
Right.
you know, I'm very passionate about fatherhood now and marriage and just where my journey has gone. And I just see so many glaring errors. And I just think, man, like what a travesty in leadership.
I'm glad you brought that up, and we're put that sidebar. We got two more things because there's one. You know, we talked about just recently about the Texas fire, and I brought up like there's an attack on on our food supply chain, and I think you mentioned that food prices are going to be going up exponentially. You saw an article on that.
Yeah, just on Twitter this morning, I
Yeah.
was reading an article. I'll try to find it, but it was basically saying that Americans it's like gone up another 11%. It's continued to go up.
Right. And here's the thing. You go to, you know, I'm out east, and I know there's a couple of places when you go to the grocery store, there's been times where you get those scares. I walk in to get something, and I try to be clear. Most people know we're pretty self-sufficient. I got a garden. I buy from local ranchers here. Very rare do I need to go to the store for anything big, like maybe rice or you know, something along those lines. But it's not often that I try to be. I'm trying to be more and more self-sufficient every week at this point. And to see that the food prices are going up, you know, people talk about, you know, the war in the Ukraine and war on this or war on that, and people tend to forget, hey, you need to kind of just take a step back. There's a war going on here, whether you want to admit it or not, and that's a war on your well-being, and you know, they're raising prices on everything. AI is taking over, you know, certain jobs, and this is all, you know, stuff that we can get on, you know, at another time. But just pay attention to what's going on. If you're watching this, whether you're live right now on any one of the other platforms, or you watch this during the weekend, as most of you do, leave a comment and let me know what you guys' thoughts are. What are food prices for like milk or a loaf of bread in your area right now? It's shocking to see how much it's gone up over just the last 2 years out here. So, all right, we got one more I want to cover, and Joel, without having really told anybody, you being a community hero yourself, Pittsburgh police and responding to certain emergency calls. This one really kind of caught me by surprise here. The city of Pittsburgh, um, city of Pittsburgh, um, is creating a telephone reporting unit, or the TRU, to dispatch calls that do not require an in-person response by officers. The TRU will not be assigned to any in-progress call where the suspect may be on scene, any crime where a person may need medical aid, any domestic disputes, you know, that kind of, and that makes sense to me. Calls related to crimes such as criminal mischief, theft, harassment, burglary alarms will all be handled by the TRU or other forms of online reporting. And this is according to the Pittsburgh base station WPXI. The Pittsburgh police chief, Larry, I'm not going to pronounce his last name right. This is all a change in effort to cut down the department's call volume from 200,000 to 50,000 calls a year. Is this normal for an agency to try to do something like this?
Yeah, it's completely normal. I mean, Pittsburgh, they're historically, from what I can recall from the news and stuff, pretty violent city. No, I'm thinking of Philadelphia. Actually, I take that back. So Philadelphia is what I'm thinking of, but still in that area, probably a pretty busy suburban town. And it's pretty common. I have a background working for the Oakland Police Department and San Francisco. So on the West Coast, those are probably one of the top, other than LA, they're probably the top two, one of the busiest for call volume. And, we started implementing a lot of that stuff for a long time, because right now, especially, we are facing a worldwide, or I should say nationwide, epidemic in staffing. Like, police officers they cannot recruit enough officers to work and do the job. It's just, people just don't want to do it anymore. So they're facing a major crisis.
Yeah.
And because staffing is so low and the responsibilities for officers have gone up enormously, I was an officer for almost 15 years. And so the amount of paperwork that has continued to rise and the responsibilities for an officer, and you hear a lot of cops gripe about this, is that they have become the solution for everything, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's mental health, homeless, crime fighting, therapy. Like, an officer has to wield and do all these jobs, and they're just being like, when the cities can't figure out what to do with their problems, they're like, oh, we'll just make the police do it. And so the police have added more and more on their plate. And of course, maybe for better or for worse, the scrutiny on officers and their conduct has gone exponentially up in the last decade. And there's obviously a lot of pros to that. I think I totally believe in transparency, but I've also seen where some of these government agencies and so-called thought leaders that are overseeing departments, right? And they call themselves like oversight committees. They're actually just handcuffing the police officers by making them do all this unnecessary paperwork. And it just requires an officer to stop what he's doing. So now, instead of going back out into the field and getting back into action and being able to take calls and handle things, they can't. They have to actually tell the dispatcher, like, I'm out of service right now because I got to go do all this paperwork.
Right.
And so what you're finding is, like, they can't respond to these calls. I don't want to call them meaningless, but they cannot respond to them because they just don't have the capacity now. They're being pulled in every other direction.
Their hands are being tied.
Yeah.
Hands are being tied, and there's already a shortage, as you mentioned earlier. There's a shortage of law enforcement. Let me ask you this, since we're talking about law enforcement right now. I've seen on social media a lot lately where you see these people kind of testing police officers on, I'm doing what they say, like a First Amendment audit or something like that. And I almost feel like they're trying to bait these officers into something. And at first I was like, okay, I could see that they're testing to see what the officer knows. And that lasted all of about 5 seconds, until one guy just got completely irate and started screaming at this, I'm not moving, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, blah, 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 blah. I sue you guys for a living. And I'm like, okay, so you're one of those people. You could care less that this man, woman, this law enforcement person is here to, is they got enough to worry about other than some douchebag like you coming up and trying to make their day worse just to catch them in the act of X, Y, and Z. There's absolutely no humanity, and I have no respect for people. I get why people do that, but I think, when a few years ago, when the new thing was to bag on police officers, let's defund the police. When that movement was going on, it was like, man, you guys are dumb. What are you gonna do when something happens? Well, the police, I called the police. Well, you were the same one marching about defunding the police, and now you're complaining because you called the police and they didn't show up. You can't have your cake and eat it. Like, let's be reasonable. And excuse me, I think the other thing is, I look at regardless of what profession you're in. Gabe, what's up, brother? Appreciate you jumping on. Whatever, regardless of what profession you're in, there's always something. You're always going to have one person, that bad seed in the bushel, right? That doesn't that doesn't mean that that department or police officers are bad because of one person. It's the same thing in the military. It's the same thing in corporate America. I don't care where you go. You're going to have that one person in a corporate job or in the military or what have you that isn't up to snuff or kind of makes everybody else look bad. Don't judge a group of people off of one person's actions. That's just my 2 cents on that. There's a reason why I named this Heroes Media Group. We want to because we support 9 years strong, support our brothers and sisters that put on the uniform in the military and law enforcement, firefighters, first responders, you name it, the people that are out there doing it day in and day out. That's what we're here for, to spread positivity and show support to those that are doing right and that have a passion to help other people. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. I get passionate about it, but it honestly it bothers me that people do that stuff, and it's like, man, I do not want to be because karma, you want to sit there. Karma is a big, I I admit, have I sped? Have I been pulled over? Absolutely. And I'm the biggest thing I've learned is, hands at 10 and 2, and just yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and you don't show attitude, you'd be surprised at just how they reciprocate and are just as respectful, if not more, back and making sure. And 9 out of 10 times, you're the one that did do something wrong, not them, which is why they pulled you over anyway. Let's be honest. So that being said,
Yeah, people really don't know, what it's like to put on the uniform and to do the job. And like you said, I remember, especially in San Francisco, a lot of times cops would just pull people over because it was our job. We would be out, and if you saw somebody make an error, it was not necessarily to ruin your day, but it was just kind of like part of what we're doing. And I know for being an Oakland cop, like I was never a traffic guy, so like I could care less about writing tickets. I was always using the traffic stop to try to get into something bigger, like, oh, does this person have guns or drugs, or like I want to learn, is this person on probation or parole, like who is this person? So I always use the traffic stop to get somewhere else. And if I found I wasn't getting anywhere, then I was like, all right, have a great day. Like I could care less. And I know a lot of officers in San Francisco, I would maybe be sitting in the car and they'd come back and I'd be like, oh, what are you doing? They're like, I'm writing this person a ticket. I'm like, oh, why? And usually the answer was like, he failed the attitude test. And so, like you said, it was always just respect. Like
yeah,
a lot of times they'd let you go, but if you had such a chip on your shoulder and it was just this, attitude, you were probably going to get a ticket. So like you said, 10 and 2, it goes a long way, and just being respectful. And I will say, I think what I've noticed over the last 15 years, I think a big thing that people just don't realize, right, is that we have, for the first time, been exposed to police officers and the violence and the shootings that really, like, people never talked about. Like, cognitively, people understood that officers got in shootings and people died, but they didn't want to think about it. And then now with body worn cameras, we see it in the news all the time.
oh, all the time,
And
all the
so
time.
we just kind of expose the public right away, and we're like, hey, here you go, here's the body worn cameras. And I think people were shocked. I think they were like, oh my God, like I didn't know this was happening in my city. Like officers are killing people, like not regularly, but you might get like 10 officer involved shootings in your somewhere nearby, right? Which is a good amount. And so to see someone's life get taken, it's traumatic.
Yeah,
And I get it. And unfortunately, the police never had to explain themselves too much. And so when you see some of these shootings, you're like, oh, that can't be justified. Many times it is, but people don't understand the why. They don't understand the legal justifications. And don't get me wrong, there's some that were heinous and that were uncalled for. So those guys, they made mistakes and they shouldn't be officers. But a lot of times you'll see like, how could that be justified? Well, when you understand the basics of the law, it actually makes sense. And most people, even if I were to explain to them logically, well, this is what the law says, right? And this is what the officer was justified. Some people still can't grasp that. And I understand. And the problem is they've never been put in a pressure cooker situation like that. So they can't empathize. It's like, and a lot of these people have never been in a fight in their lives. And I
Right.
remember, I can tell you, Adam, I had somebody like I was wrestling with on the ground, and I was in control. Like I knew I was going to win, but I had to struggle a little bit. And someone's like, taunting me from the side and like, oh, you're hurting this. I'm not even doing anything. I know what I'm doing. I wasn't using any force. I was just kind of controlling the person and trying to get the hands. And I had to look up at this person. I had my handcuffs. I said, hey, do you want to do it? Can you do it better? Because I guarantee you can't. And as a seasoned officer, I actually tried to use less force. And people were always surprised. I can think of an altercation where I simply, and it was a technique I had learned, but I had used my forearm to simply blast this guy who was about to throw a haymaker punch at me. And I remember when I went back, I ended up taking the guy down. I hit him with a forearm across his chest and then took him down and did what I had to do. And that was it. And the fight was over. And it was the most minimal amount of force you can possibly use, especially from someone who was considered actively resisting. The law, he literally took his hand, he took a scarf off his neck, wrapped it around his hands, and like stepped to me and said, like, what, you got an effing problem? And so that was when I was like, okay, he's going to swing on me. So I had to close the gap. And later when I went back to the office and the guys were looking at the video, they go, man, what? You could have hit him with your baton. Why didn't you? And I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, was I justified in doing it? Yes, because he was actively resisting, and intermediate force in that context would have been appropriate.
Right.
I use the most minimal. It's a personal body weapon, my forearm across the guy's chest. Like, you can't get more minimal than that, other than me like, please, sir, don't hit me in the face, right? Which wasn't going to work. So, that came though from me as being a seasoned veteran and being in more and more altercations and just being really comfortable with my own expertise and fighting ability. Most cops won't do that. And again, I would have been justified in using a baton or pepper spray. But people just don't understand, Adam, because they haven't been in the fight. And the last thing I would say to your listeners is, I am, before I left the San Francisco Police Department, I was in the force options and force training department. And so I was exposed to a lot of really good training. And one of the best trainings I ever went to was Dr. Bill Lewinsky, the founder of Force Science Institute. Everybody should go check him out. And really what you start to learn about is how the brain actually reacts to threats and errors and air management. And when you actually start to understand why you really get in, I actually interviewed him on my podcast a couple of years back, but you will really understand how people react to threats and force. And it's really just the brain. It's brain science.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you an example of like something that people would be like, come on, that's impossible. Like a big thing is he shot him in the back, right? That's a big one. Or another one is he shot him too many times. Well, Bill Lewinsky and his team have done multiple studies where you can see, for example, they'll do like a body and show how long it takes a body to drop to the ground. And a body can take, I don't know, let's say 3 seconds. But an officer ability to recognize that the person is no longer a threat could take 2 seconds. But in 2 seconds, an officer can get 6 rounds off.
Right.
So again, when we're talking about excessive threats, I'm not justifying like, oh, he shouldn't have done that. I'm just saying you start to see why officers and what they do under threat. The brain is amazing. And when you're in an amygdala hijack and you're in that primal brain response, you'd be surprised at what can happen. And so most of the people that are judging officers, it's a combat. They've never been in a fight. They've never been in a situation. They don't understand how force science works, how the brain works. And because of that, it's very difficult to explain. It's very difficult to say, hey, this was justified.
Yeah.
And I think as police, we have to do a better job of really explaining that and having some of the science that Bill Lewinsky and others are promoting and you're actually seeing.
Let me ask you a question on this here. It's kind of an ignorant question. I'm doing it on purpose. Each department has their own set of rules as far as, or let me rephrase that. Does each department have its own set of rules as how to actively engage in somebody that poses as a threat? or is there a universal rule for all departments across the country? How exactly? Because I don't know. I've never been a police officer or anything like that. So I'm legitimately asking: is there one set of rules for everyone, or does each department kind of have their own way to dictate how to engage somebody based off of a certain threat level?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a universal law. It's called Graham versus Connor. It was a big historical Supreme Court case, and that was really, believe it or not, it wasn't actually, I think, finalized till 1989. And so it's crazy to me actually to think about that. You think about, law enforcement has been around since like the 1880s.
Yeah.
We didn't actually codify what is use of force till 1989, which blows my mind, because that means that officers were really just kind of like flying by the seat of their pants. They were like, well, they were doing what they thought was reasonable. I think overall for like 100 years, they did a pretty good job. I mean, knowing that they didn't even have like a code of like how to really act. I mean, they could have been like the Wild Wild West, just shooting everybody that they didn't like, but they didn't. So I think there's something amazingly like humanitarian that officers, these guys want to do good. Most of them want to do good. Not everyone, but most of them have a genuine heart to do good and fight evil. So I would say that, but that was really the Supreme Court. That was the first time that we had this 3-pronged process where we looked at what is a legitimate use of force. And when you're looking at the context, it's pretty simple. Is the person, an immediate threat? Is this person posing an immediate threat? Are they actively resisting or fleeing? And, do you need to an arrest, prevent escape, or overcome their resistance? These are kind of the 3-pronged approach that we're using. And if you have that criteria, then you can use force, or you can, even in certain circumstances, use deadly force. So that's really what officers started being judged on, is that was the 3-pronged approach. Now, having said that, we all have this universal, like you said, that's a universal code everybody in law enforcement knows, but every city, every state is completely different. So for example, in San Francisco, using a carotid chokehold, like a MMA chokehold, right, which was taught and allowed for law enforcement, completely banned. And at one point you were allowed to use it only in it would be the equivalent. They eventually changed the level of force and said that's the equivalent of shooting somebody. Before, it was not. It was just considered like,
Wow.
For example, the guy that threatened to hit me, it probably would have been an intermediate use of force, similar to using a baton. Now, where I'm at in Idaho, I was just talking to a local captain out here, and he was like, man, it's crazy. He's also from the West Coast, so he's used to some of the standards there.
Yeah.
And he said, I mean, if you're just actively resisting, you're allowed to choke somebody out. You're allowed to do a carotid chokehold. So the parameters for use of force changes per district, right? Per wherever you work. But yeah, I mean, in general, when you're talking about deadly force, every officer, and I mean that nothing's changed from the, are you going to affect an arrest, prevent escape, overcome resistance? Is this person an immediate threat? Are they actively resisting or trying to flee? And like that doesn't change. So
got it. I appreciate that. Here's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna shift gears. Okay. I named this one, I believe I said parenting. Those of you that have been following me for years know that I was a single parent for 15 years. Joel, you are a father yourself. And a lot of our viewers out here. David, good morning to you. Appreciate you. Dave, Gabe, who are on, friends of the network and parents themselves. So this will be good for you guys as well. Joel, what's the hardest thing that you've had to deal with being a father?
So for me, I think everybody's journey is a little bit different. But, one of the things I think I've shared with you in the past is, my kids, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so when my oldest, who's 10 now, when he turned 4, between like 4 and 6, I mean, we would get in these just crazy fights. I mean, and it was just mind blowing to me. I'm like, I don't even know why this is happening. I mean, I don't spank you. You eat organic food. Like, I'm a big holistic health guy. Like, I don't know how Like I would always try to think like gut brain, like what's going on, right? And
Mhm.
he would yell at me, he would spit at me, he would kick me, he would just yell and rage, and I would have to like walk out of the house. I mean, I didn't even know what to do because I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. Like I've yelled at you, maybe I spanked you once. We didn't really do any spanking, but like maybe I tried it because I'm like, maybe this will work. And I just couldn't figure it out, man. So
Yeah.
I think the biggest hurdle that I dealt with was feeling lost. And that also started to happen even with my second child, who's 6 now. He started taking on some of the patterns that my oldest was doing. And so I think the hardest thing I've had to deal with is I would say that is just feeling like completely lost. Like, when is this going to end? Because nothing I seem to do matters, and this little child hates me, and you just worry about like what's going to happen in the future when this person's 20, like then what?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of so my son's 21, just turned 21. And
And by the way, I didn't grow up this way. Like my dad was a police officer. Not that that means anything, but I'm just kind of giving you like I was born in 1982, so I'm 41, and it was like if you get out of line, like I'm gonna spank you,
yeah,
and if
it
you
was
get out of line, like
there
I
was
feared my dad.
there was a set of discipline things that happened to you when you were a kid. I'm a little bit older than you are. I remember getting spanked, as a kid. um, my adopted dad, he was a truck driver. So when he would come home, it was like you kind of nervous because like, oh, you've been bad. Mom would say something. It's like,
Yeah,
you get a crack on the ass and whatnot. And then, my pop, he would, my mom, my technically he's my stepdad, but to me he's pop. I call him Pop. Love him to death. Pop, shout out to you. I know you're out watching this. Um, he had a different approach, and it was always just kind of like verbal, like you're not going to do this or you're grounded. It was the grounding phase was a big thing, there. So it's like I took that, and when I became a dad, I was still in the military, and it was, even though I was a guard guy, but it was still very much um rule with an iron fist. And it was kind of like, I'll never forget this. I had a family member, I won't say who, they said he's not one of your privates, because I was treating him like one of my troops. And I didn't think that was a bad thing. I thought because I was giving him the discipline. Fortunately, he turned out okay, but that didn't mean we didn't have problems. I think the biggest thing I had was right when you get into the uh teenage years, and right as he was ending his junior high, getting ready to go into high school, we had to make a decision of he was going to go to this private school that he got accepted into, but it was 2 hours away, but it was just happened to be right next to his grandparents. So I let him move in with his grandparents. And that, to date, hardest decision I've ever had to make as a parent. Looking back on it, I would do it 10 out of 10 more times because of what happened. Our job as parents is to try to give our kids the best life, things that we didn't have. We want them to succeed more than things that we did. And I believe now I've done that. But for a lot of the fathers out there that are watching and whatnot, I think we're in an age now, from what I've seen, and I taught high school for a few years in Arizona. The kids that were, bad kids, or the ones that were not getting good grades or whatnot, a lot of them were just like there was no discipline at home. And I think even
yeah,
even today, where the biggest the thing is how you discipline your kid. Hey, go get your iPad and go sit in the corner, or go watch or there's such a disconnect. And this is just my opinion. This is how I feel. But do you think that there's a more disconnect now with parents and the way children are being raised today?
yeah, there's a huge disconnect, like you said, and we're busier than ever, right? We're busier than ever. We're in the most connected age than ever, but we're actually disconnected, like you said, because it's just so much easier to hand the kid an iPad and shut up. Here's an iPad. Here's an iPhone. And like I'll just tell you, like my wife, since leaving law enforcement, um, I'm in my office, that's why I work from my office, coaching and doing podcasts, etc. And my wife has made the decision to be a stay-at-home mom. So the kids are around us all the time. So like we legitimately don't get breaks. Like there's times where they go to like this one school, but it's only for like a couple hours a day. So, and that's once a week. Now that's not everybody, and we'll be looking at modifying some things, but the bottom line is we have no breaks. So I get it. Like it would be nice to be like, just shut up. Here's an iPad and like go chill. Cause like, honestly, I need to chill. Like
Right.
I need a second to chill. So, and my kids can be just like, come on, let's play. Let's go do it. They're both boys. Like they don't stop. They do not stop. They're not girls. I not only say, cause I've seen girls and like, I'm like, man, she seems so like, she's just over there coloring by herself. Like I would love that to happen. It's
Yeah.
not happening in our household. So, um, I get it. And, I think my wife and I, a couple of things that work for us, maybe they don't, maybe it's more stress for us, but one is kind of like we have like standards and values of like what we're going to stand by. And
Yeah.
sure, every now and then, like they get some time to watch an episode or whatever, but very rare. And I mean, here's the thing, we don't even have a TV in our house. And it's not because I'm some self-righteous person. It really just like we moved several times and we just, once we became parents, my wife and I honestly just stopped watching TV. I just have so much to do on the outside and she does too. Like by the time we actually have time to connect and like say hello to each other, we're not watching TV, we're like connecting. So we just don't have it even in our house. So that also makes it easy. Like again, I have a laptop and stuff and the boys can watch Netflix or whatever, but it just, it doesn't happen. And so my wife again has some very high standards. And so even if she wanted to break that rule in her, she wouldn't. Like she would kind of sit, pause and say, I'm copping out. Like I know what's happening. I'm triggered. I'm being angry. I'm being lazy. I'm not going to do that. And so she'll take that time to pivot and be like, all right, this is an opportunity for me to lead. This is an opportunity for me to lead the kids and enroll them into something new. And so, for example, I had Matt Bodrow on my podcast not too long ago, and he's the founder of Apogee Strong with Tim Kennedy, who everybody knows Tim Kennedy, ex-Green Beret, MMA fighter. And they're out there teaching a different way, teaching how to raise young men and boys in a completely different way. And this is like the true way of learning is what they're saying, basically. And we were talking about just this idea of like, oh, your kids are bored? Like, good. It's okay to be bored.
Yeah.
It's okay to be bored. Be bored.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you've got to set those standards over and over again. And it's not easy because your energy gets wiped out trying to repeat yourself to your kids over and over again. You get drained, man. And having to repeat the same standard over and over again, it's exhausting. But eventually they understand like, hey, these are the boundaries, these are the frameworks. This is the code. Everybody in military and police have a code. This is the code that we live by. This is what we stand for as a family. And so it takes a while. And I can tell you as a guy who was not leading the family
Yeah.
and was taking the back seat and just like, well, we'll just figure out what happens. And also I have a very interesting, like I would do things the way my dad did things, right? I feared my dad and my wife was like, we're not going to do that with our kids. I don't want you to, they're not going to grow up fearing their parent. And there's a lot of neuroscience now suggesting that's probably not the best way. That's why we've moved away from a lot of this spanking and all this corporal punishment is because is this idea of fear is this a good idea? And that's how I was raised. And, you think, oh, well, I turned out okay. I did, but I also have a lot of other issues that come with that. So
Yeah.
long story short, we chose to raise them differently, but because of that, I wasn't equipped with the skills to do that. My wife has a background in child development. I didn't. And so I would just do what I knew, which is how I was raised and what beliefs I brought into the world. And it was very conflicting. So many times I would just take a backseat and be like, well, whatever. And I think a lot of guys, that's what we do when it comes to fatherhood and marriage. What I've learned over time is it's a skill. It's a freaking skill, man. You go to the gym, you work your muscles out. It's the same thing. You got to go to the gym. You got to go to the dojo with your family and your marriage. And many of us don't. We're just like, well, we'll see. I'll see what happens. Gonna see what happens. I'm gonna fly by the seat of my pants. And I think things will eventually work out. Like things usually do. I'm here to tell you, like they don't. Like for me, they didn't. Maybe some guys just got really lucky.
No.
Not for me.
I'm having flashbacks as I'm listening to you because it was, you're married, you have the opportunity because there's somebody else in that house with you now as a single parent who is the other person was not in the picture, so it was just me. It was man, they don't write a book about that. You can read every parenting book that was on there. Well, first off, I can't read, so, like, that wasn't gonna be a big thing for me anyway. I was like, books on tape, and I'm dating myself there, but it was okay, and did I pick up some things from my parents? I p I say this, and I love my parents dearly. I think I used a lot of the things that I that that they instilled in me that I didn't wanna do in raising my son, because I had this picture, this image of how I wanted to raise my son, Little Bird, and it was I did a lot of that up until family started being more in the picture and raising. And here's the thing, I realized you can't, it takes a village to raise a young man. And I was very much, I felt alone, I was depressed, and every issue that I had on a personal level, I didn't deal with my own issues. I put everything in that way back in that closet. And I was just like, I'll wait until he's older because my focus needs to be on him. And the problem with that is if you're not 100% or where you need to be, then you're not being present 100% for your child that needs you to be 100% for them. And looking back on it, I got lucky. I got lucky and it wasn't until he really kind of hit high school where it actually brought us closer. And to this day, in fact, last night, like I said, my son's 21 years old now, and we talk to each other either via text or we do a phone call every night since he started college. The only time I don't talk to him, he's in the military. He's in ROTC. So if he's doing a field training exercise or whatnot, I know he's going to be in the field for a few days. That's the only time we haven't talked. I can count on one hand how many times I haven't talked to my son in the last 3.5 years. Every single night. And I'm not bragging as a parent. I am not. I wouldn't consider I would consider myself an okay father at best. I would consider myself a fairly good father for somebody who had the mindset of God really is playing a joke right now if he's giving me a child to raise by myself. I was like, you want to talk about a joke? That's funny. Let's give Bird a kid to raise by himself. That's funny, you know. But now I look at it as like you see other parents out there. I have fathers and other parents that come to me and it's like, oh, how'd you do it? You pray a lot, you have patience, and you find out what works. I used to spank. I gave him a couple of thumps on the head with my finger once. I stopped that. And then I find out, okay, each child you have to discipline differently. He was into the tablets and the video games. You take that stuff away, and oh my God, you think, the end of the world is coming. But then you realize doing that type of discipline worked and things got better. So by the time he started high school, it actually brought our relationship much closer. And he's always been my right hand man, and I think he always will be. But Joel, you work with like first responder fathers and well, fathers in general. You have like a program or something that you've done. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And you know what? Really quick, I was just thinking what you were saying. It's so powerful. I had a mentor who I was on a call with the other day, and we were talking about this idea of manifestation goals and paradigms, right? And we all live in a paradigm, and that's just this belief system of how we think the world is and is created, and our life is a paradigm. Like you hear people talk about paradigms, like, hey, if you want to be wealthy, then just take down the paradigm that you're a wealthy person. If you want to say that you're an elite father and a husband, we'll just take on that paradigm. Like that's who I am. And then embody that. Right. And it sounds easier. It's easier said than done. Right. But interestingly enough, he said paradigms are created by your genetics. 50% is from your genetics. You inherit some of them. And then the other 50% is your environment. So the environment you're raised, your lifestyle, you always hear that Jim Rohn quote, you are the product of the 5 friends that you're around. So that's your environment, right? And he said, your paradigm, whatever it is, guess what? If you don't fix your paradigm, your child's going to inherit it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, brutal. So if you have an idea that like, this is just the way the world is, like I'll always be poor, like whether you try to like pretend like you don't think that and like, you do your visualization, but like in subconsciously, you're like, no, I'm a poor person. Your child's going to inherit the same paradigm.
Yeah.
And here's another way to look at it. If you don't have kids, your paradigm, your clients will inherit. So if you're a coach or you're somebody who's like, you're a leader of men,
Yeah.
women, well, whatever your paradigm is, they're going to inherit. Whatever you don't fix, they'll inherit. So that really blew my mind just kind of thinking about that. And I think like what you kind of, talked about in your own story, it makes perfect sense. And so, yeah. Yeah, man. So my story briefly is, I've been married for 11 years and I always say like probably 10 of those years, my marriage sucked. It was up and down. 1 week was good. 1 week was bad. And it was like that for 10 years. And it was just like, man, this is ridiculous. Like, is there any time, like why? I understand people go through issues, but we should have more good times than bad times. And it never felt that way. And we got 2 boys and, it just always felt unsteady. It always felt rocky. And my wife, issued a kind of a challenge to me in the last couple of years and said, Joel, like you need help. And I'm like, I don't need help. Like, do you know who I am? Like I read all the books. I'm a life coach. I have all these certifications because I actually like to grow and learn and I want to be better. So like, I'm driven by that. And I'm like, I've tried everything. I've tried therapy. I've tried neurofeedback. I told you I did gut protocols. Like I've done everything I can possibly think of to help these kids.
Yeah.
And I don't like, you are the problem. Like I've tried everything. You're the problem. And so are the kids, like their rage, their issues. I can't handle it. Like therapy's not helping, like nothing's helping. And she's like, no, you need to go hire this dad coach and parenting coach. And you need help. And I'm like, I dug my heels in, Adam. I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, and not that I didn't want to grow. Cause again, I'm driven to do that.
Right.
I just felt like this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous time in our lives. I just got let go from the San Francisco Police Department. I'm trying to scale my coaching business and you want me to waste time on fatherhood and parenting. Like we've got bigger problems right now. Right. And so long story short, I could tell she was pretty serious. And it's funny, we were just talking the other day about this and she's like, yeah, I never told you, but like in my head, I subconscious, like that was an ultimatum for me. Like I was going to give you a year to like get stuff together. And if you didn't, I was probably going to tell you adios. And I was like, I had no idea. I was like, wow. I said, I did know you were serious. I said, I did know, I could tell this was different. And I asked her, I go, wow, you never told me that. And I'm like, why is it so serious for you this time? And she said, I just didn't want to live my life this way.
Yeah.
And she just got fed up. Right. And I know a lot of guys that I coach and work with, I hear that a lot. And we just don't know when the moment's going to come. Usually it comes with, hey, I want a divorce. Your wife they've been planning it. Or I've heard things like, I just don't love you anymore. Like, I like you. Like there's so many things I like about you, but I just don't love you.
Yeah.
And so my wife had kind of planned her exit plan. But anyway, she gave me this challenge and I took her up on it. And I went all in, man. I just went all in. I finally, like, again, we were talking about, you can read all the books and all these things. It doesn't really matter. And I look back, I just wasn't putting it into action enough. Maybe I tried a concept in the book, but then if it didn't work, I just like gave up and it went back to square one. And so having a coach, having a mentor, being extremely intentional, it was the first time I think I was super intentional. And I was really all intentional because I was like, I'm going to prove to her out of spite that she's wrong. And this coach is going to tell me how like messed up she is and how great I am.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go all in on this course to prove to her that I'm not the problem. And so I was super intentional, maybe for the wrong reasons, but I was super intentional. I kept getting immediate feedback from my coach. And so I'd reiterate. And then I would just go back out there and I would put the practice in the work. And dude, I'm telling you, man, in about 3 months, my marriage, my family life completely changed. Now, I had to keep putting in the work. This is years later, but what it changed my paradigm, go figure.
Yeah.
I actually started believing like marriage could be awesome. My family could be awesome. And it completely changed my life. And I want to give that gift to other men. And after a couple of years, after going through the process, I was like, man, how did this happen? Like a complete 180. I'm like, how did this happen? And I started to kind of reverse engineer and work backwards. And I'm like, oh, this is why it worked. Oh, this is why it worked. And basically I put together a framework from all my all the books that I read throughout the years and all the life coaching and the seminars from parenting seminars and Tony Robbins, all that stuff. I just put it together and then I made it into a coaching program, a framework that like guys can, I think guys, we like that too. Like, just give me the blueprint, man. If you tell me I can do this, steps 1, A, B, C, steps 1 through 10, and you're telling me, Joel, all I got to do is do this. And then my marriage is going to change. My fatherhood, my relationship, my kids going to change. I'll do it. And so that's what I created, because I think more so than ever, fathers matter and we're lacking in the world.
Oh,
And it's super important, man.
I think one of my pet peeves in the world, and I have very little, but the one thing that bothers me is when you see fathers walk away from their responsibilities to their children, and a lot of it has been, well, all she wants is child support and this and that. Now I get it. It takes two to tango. I'm not saying that the women, but right now we're not talking about the women. We're talking about fathers in particular. That, you walk away like, oh my, she won't let me see my kids and this and that. That you can come up with 100 reasons why. That doesn't mean you give up. You don't stop. The reason why I got full custody is because I didn't quit on it. It was you're not taking, I took the mindset of like, the only way you're going to take my kid away from me is if you pry him from my cold, lifeless hands. I didn't care. I didn't care. I was at the point where I would do anything, and I'm not going to get into detail, but I would literally do anything to ensure that I had my son. And I don't think a lot of guys there, I've seen certain situations where a lot of guys just like, it's just easier to walk away. The child would be better off. It's not. Look at the world that we live in today. Most people that, men that are incarcerated and whatnot, is because the father was not in the picture.
Yeah.
Guys, if you're going to procreate, then you need to take that responsibility and make sure that you're there for that child or those children. Period. Point blank. Joel, how can, if people that are listening to this, maybe there's a father out there that wants to learn more about your program and whatnot, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, a couple ways. I mean, obviously they probably, they're watching this live, but I have a couple websites. So you can go to joelevancoaching.com. I have a new one coming out. It's obviously firstresponderfathers.com, but the website's being kind of renovated right now. It'll probably be like up and running, looking really nice in about a month. I'm on Instagram. That's where I'm usually at. It's really me. I don't have any bots or VAs or anything. It's really me. So you can get me, Joel Evan Coaching, on Instagram, or First Responder Fathers on Instagram. Those are probably the best ways. But yeah, or otherwise, just like I said, go to the website. Any of those websites that I just gave you, those are some easy ones.
Awesome. So dads out there, if you're watching this, whether you're on the live or you're watching this over the weekend, reach out to Joel. Good person. He's just a good person to have in your network, period. So I appreciate that. Joel, we're coming up on time. We got to transition here a little bit. We're going to talk about, now is the section where we talk about what people missed on the shows this week. And you having a show, being part of the HMG family, which we're super proud of and happy to have you on. We're going to talk about some of the shows here, but before we dive into that, we got a couple of new shows to the family here recently. We have Homefront Sit Rep, which we'll talk about here in just a second, and we just signed a new show yesterday. Or I mentioned this show last week, but it became official as of yesterday. Patriots Inside the Wire. So stay tuned for those two shows. You're going to be able to see them on HMG here real soon. So, Joel, why don't you? I know we're coming up on time, so why don't you start us off with your episodes this week?
Yeah, I had some phenomenal episodes this week. Thanks for highlighting that. I had John Gray on the show. So this is pretty apropos that we're talking about relationships and fatherhood, but I had John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, like the #1 relationship expert in the world, was gracious enough to come on the show. And it was pretty cool. He blew my mind. The guy's a legend. He's like 70 years old. And I think I asked him like one question, which was like, "Hi, John, welcome to the show." He did not stop talking. I've never had that where he just talked for an hour straight. And it was amazing, though. It was just, he was dropping knowledge nuggets left and right. And so if you're looking at it, just upgrading your marriage, your sex life, your intimacy, your fatherhood, anything, like, that guy's a legend. And he dropped some really powerful, he really, and we talked before the show, he really tried to, he wanted to give people as many nuggets as he could. And so it was really funny because he had told me prior, he's like, oh, I have another engagement at 5 till I have to leave. I said, yeah, no problem. And he talked he actually talked 10 minutes after. He just kept talking. So really just an amazing guy. I've had a chance to meet him in person and see him talk as well. And he really is the real deal. He's just a genuine good man. And so I can't recommend, his books are phenomenal too. So John Gray was on the show. And then I had another guy, Jesse Harless, really interesting. He's got a background. I mean, he was an addict. He dealt with trauma and anxiety, and he turned it all around and he became a therapist. And through his therapy, though, he felt like there was a calling even for more. And so he started dabbling with, plant medicine, psilocybin, ayahuasca, and he stumbled upon his latest endeavor, which is 5-MeO DMT, which I first heard about this molecule. They call it the God molecule. And you'll hear, you could type it in, 5-MeO DMT. And if you type it in online, type in like Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson. And that's a good one. You can see Mike Tyson talking about it. And he's like, Joe's like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, it's like this the toad medicine, the toad poison. And even Mike Tyson said, I've never experienced anything more than this, like phenomenal than this. And the reason they call it the God molecule is because people, after an experience of this, they actually come back feeling like they either connected with God, they saw God, they are God. They do different things with this molecule. Unlike anything I've ever heard from any like ayahuasca or any other plant medicine, like psilocybin, this one, Adam, is like, it's crazy. Like the experience and the transformation that a lot of people can have. And I had a friend that just recently did it too. And he came back and lost 30 pounds of weight. And he said, I didn't do anything differently. I literally think I just shed so much trauma that when I came back, my body just lost the weight naturally. So a lot of phenomenal, cool results. And this guy's very big at integrating when you come back from these kind of experiences. Like they're not something that you just do and you're like, oh, I had a great time. And like, no, you got to integrate back it into your life. So it's a really good episode if you want to learn more about that. And it sounds like a pretty phenomenal experience. So
yeah, I see more and more of the should we say holistic or natural medicines. Like you see the psilocybin and the journeys. I've got, I did a series on the Decision Hour last year where I was talking to tier 1 special operations guys that have gone through a lot of it, and very high stress type of job, and then they come back, they're like, I'm not that guy anymore. Like I wouldn't cause a fight. I'd walk away from anything. As when I was a tier 1 guy, I was like, I'm gonna break this guy's nose. What it was just like, it was like a complete 180 shift. When you're talking to these guys and you're like, I'm sitting in there like, okay, I know this guy's a badass and he does this, this, and this. And then you're talking to him and he's just like, I like this, and just so mellow. And you're just like, what in the hell did you do? And they talk about their experience. I got to look this up. 5-MeO DMT.
Yeah. Check it out, dude.
I love it. Well, listen, Joel, I know you got to go, man. But I'll say this. I appreciate you. And we're here for you. So those of you that are watching, whether it's live or throughout the weekend, make sure you check Joel out on the social platforms. We'll have his stuff up after the show. So Joel, appreciate you, brother.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Yep. Have a good one, brother.
Bye.
All right. Let's continue on. We're going on with let me see here, David. Let me catch up with some of these here. David, you're on Homefront Sit Rep podcast. Oh, I didn't say the podcast part. I apologize. Yes, you are right. Patriots Inside the Wire, military broadcast. Yeah, she didn't want me to say military broadcast. I talked to her, Tracy, last night, but that's all right. All right. Let's what do we have next? Homefront Sit Rep podcast. That's actually the next one we have. So this is a newer show. Just recently onboarded them, and David is in the comments here. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. What is Homefront Sit Rep podcast? It focuses on veteran service organizations from around the United States. They also bring veteran-owned business owners and other veterans to tell their stories, their continued service to the veteran community. Also on the podcast, they engage in very meaningful conversations. And of course, we're veterans, right? So there's going to be some back and forth banter, some fun banter while telling their journeys and whatnot. This is a really cool episode. I've seen this, listened to it for quite a while now. Friends with David are there's another one that he does that he created called Tip of the Spear. We actually hosted this Wednesday night this past week. Great kind of a roundtable and stuff as well. So Mr. David has done a lot of stuff. Home Front Sit Rep podcast. Check it out. They're just celebrated their 1 year. So happy birthday to you. And you can catch their show page now live on Heroes Media Group. So as I'm going through these, folks, I'm just going through the shows that put out new content this week. Remember, you can check out all the shows by simply going to heroesmediagroup.com. All right, let's see what we got next. What do we got next? Feed the people. Yep, feed the people by the people. This week they're talking soil health. All about the soil, right? Soil health. They're catching up about recent soil health conference in Utah. And as you listen to this, you can expect tangents, rants, and just all around good time. AJ is a great host. I love this show. Make sure you check it out. Next up, what do we got? Next up, we got our boy John Mayo, the John Mayo podcast. This week, he was joined by with his friend Olg. He's a visionary thinker and advocate for extreme gratitude. How important is that, right? I love this. From his unique company, Moments Worth Remembering, Olg has made a significant impact by encouraging individuals to embrace and express gratitude in transformative way. Some of the things that they're going to explore in this particular episode: gratitude in action, the transformational power of gratitude, and vulnerability and connection. This is a great episode. Check it out. That's the John Mayo podcast. Next up, we got the Hero Academy with our boy Super Dave. Gene Reed was a special guest this week. He is the author of Police Leadership Redefined, the EQ Advantage. He serves as a professional standards unit. He's deeply involved in officer wellness. He's previously a criminal investigations over 6 years. He's earned his PhD in criminal justice, specializing in stress. He's all about helping officers in and around where he's at, all over the place. David, have a good day, brother. Appreciate you. All right, next up, what do we have? We got Beyond the Rut. Our man Jerry, this is a veteran-owned podcast here. Mastering time management doesn't have to be an uphill battle. So true. With just one productive hack, you can revolutionize the way you work and reclaim control over your day. In this particular episode, you'll be able to leverage and prioritize exercise to determine your most important work for the day. You'll be able to master time management using the Prodero technique, and they talk about that in this episode. You'll also get a great deal of an upcoming in-person leadership development workshop that is coming soon. Take a listen to find out more. We're talking about Beyond the Rut. Check it out. Next up, we got Label Free Podcast this week. The Power of Organization. How to Save Time and Energy with special guest Lucy Wall. Lucy's a professional organizer. She's the founder of LMW Edits, LLC. Lucy shares her journey of being taught to be organized by her father and how it became a natural part of her life. She talks about common misconceptions about organization, emphasizing that it's not about being lazy, but rather uninformed or overwhelmed. This was a great episode. I learned a lot from this one because one of my personal goals this year was to be more organized. So check it out, Label Free Podcast. Next up, Other Side of the Firewall. They do a show at Monday through Friday every week. Fridays, they're kind of their weekly wrap up of what they talked about each day of this week. So check them out. Great episodes this week. Other Side of the Firewall. Next up, Misfit Nation with our man Rich. Rich does a couple shows a week. This one here last night, author Terry M. Brown, born in Athens, Greece, raised as an Air Force brat. Terry's diverse background and multitude of degrees. He's a former educator, and then he embarked. She embarked on her writing journey while homeschooling her 4 children, initially focusing on small business topics. However, Terry's literary career took a turn to fiction in 2017, realizing a lifelong dream. In 2020, she published her debut novel, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, a gripping historical fiction set in the Ukraine, which garnered 12 awards. She got 12 awards for that one. Her second novel, An Enemy Like Me, set during World War II, has won an impressive 17 awards. Great episode on this one. Check it out. That's Misfit Nation. Next up, we got Pushing Back Chaos. Title of this one, Master of Puppets. No, I'm not talking about Metallica. I'm talking about serving 2 masters. What does that look like? This week, Mike and Mellon discuss the realm of serving multiple masters in life. These can be faces of money, success, alcohol, drugs, sex, fame, acknowledgement, religion, what have you. How should we organize these? What aspects do we need to acknowledge about each? More importantly, how do we decide how to pick and continue on in life? What is your master? It's a good question. Check it out. Pushing Back Chaos. Next up, Because Bikers Matter, this week's special guest, Luke Pennings, to discuss the upcoming Jenny's Ride event. The episode begins with a heartfelt discussion about the passing of Jenny and the dedication to continue the mission of supporting cancer patients. This one is a little bit of a tearjerker. I'm going to warn you right now. I love this. This was a good one. They have so they talk about the ride, the details of the upcoming ride, which is scheduled Sunday, May 5th, with a kickoff party on March 15th at Heroes West in Lamont. The event is going to feature a 52-mile ride from Fox River Harley Davidson to Corrigan's Pub in Shorewood, followed by live music from Deja Vu and various fundraising activities. So make sure you check that out. That is Because Bikers Matter podcast. Lance Henderson, what's up? Hey, man, I'm going to be your neck of the woods next week, just FYI. I'll get into that here in just a little bit. What do we got next? Next up, we have MSEC podcast. This week, historically Black colleges and universities have been a history and legacy dating back hundreds of years. This week's special guest, Dr. Cortez Dial, discusses the foundation of HBCUs, the opportunities they've provided Black Americans, and their impact on America's higher education system. That is this week's Military Child Education Coalition. Check it out. Next up, we got the Arms Room. Go check these guys out. Listen, they got some training coming up. If you go to the Arms Room show, you can find some of their training there. Independence Training or Independence Training AZ. They listed their classes that they have coming up in March. Check it out. Get some of the training. These classes are awesome. I absolutely love these classes. I've done a couple of them, and I'm hoping that I can get down there this year to do a few more. But check them out, the Arms Room show. Next up, we got your 6 at 6 with the People's Patriot Project every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. They do a roundtable of veteran artists, musicians, Last night, they were with our buddy Stephen Cochran, Label 22 launch party in Nashville, Tennessee. We were supposed to be there. Something came up. I was unable to go, unfortunately. Hope everybody had a good time there. I'm looking forward to seeing pictures and more. Shout out to Stephen Cochran, Label 22, everybody over there. Also, Jason Johnson from uh, K9 for Heroes sponsored the event. So great times down in Nashville last night. I'm sure everybody had a blast. Let me see these. What do we have here? Bad delay in the audio. Well, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. I don't know about the Tillman ride. I don't know. I'll hit you up offline. But I'll also be coming back. Also said I'll be coming back. A big announcement. I might as well say it right now. NCAA Final Four. It's March Madness. You guys see the bow tie. And nobody's commented on the bow tie today. I'm actually surprised. It's shamrocks, right? The clover. It's a clover bow tie for March. It's my favorite month, right? Birthday month, St. Patrick's Day, and it's March Madness. College basketball is in full effect, and guess who's bringing it to you? That's right. We're going to be covering a lot of college games this month. Super stoked. We got quarterfinals, semifinals, and then yours truly will be in Phoenix for the NCAA Final Four, April 6th, and then I'll be there also for the finals on April 8th in Glendale. So absolutely stoked about this. And then we also got other ACC championships. We're looking at the SoCon, Southern Conference, trying to get in with them as well. And then we'll be covering, the quarterfinals and the semifinals for the NCAA tournaments, both men and women's, this month as well. And then while I'm in Arizona, you may or may not see me out and about at some of the spring training facilities as well. So too close for me. Yes, I'm going to be too close to you. Yeah. You turn your head and cough. That's how close. We're going to make it weird, Lance. We're going to make it weird. Matt, you said you coming my way. That's a strong possibility. Very, very strong possibility. There he is, Mark Peterson. I just brought it up. Told you, Patriot Pride, brother. He was down representing down in Nashville last night. Him and Andrea down at the Label 22 launch party, which I regretfully wish I could have gone to, but I'd already talked to Steven, let him know I wasn't going to be able to make it, and ask for forgiveness. Hope you guys had a good time down there. I watched a little bit of it online. It looked like a blast and whatnot. So I love it. Appreciate you, Mark. Lance, creepy. Yeah. What would you expect anything less from me? Quite frankly, would you expect anything less from me? Hey, let me give some shout outs real quick. My Tax Fella. It's tax season. Get your taxes done. Get them done right. Go to mytaxfella.com. Alibi Tattoos. Appreciate you guys. If you need a tattoo or you need one removed, they do tattoo removal. Alibi Tattoo, Helen, Pennsylvania. Go check them out. Forget Genetics. If you're an outdoorsman, go check them out. ForgetGenetics.com. Give you 10% discount. Veteran-owned company. Motorcycle Safety Lawyers. As if I have to say it. Lance, you ride bikes. Get Motorcycle Safety Lawyers. You want these guys on your speed dial. Check it out. Got a whole brewing. Appreciate you guys. Feed the people, buy the people. Sisu Stamina and the universal learning approach. I absolutely love this stuff. I'm out now. I got to order some more. This stuff gets me through my afternoons. I love it. Jim Neary's Bait and Tackle and Warriors on the Water LTD. Great organizations there. They got some bass tournaments coming up in Southern Pennsylvania. You can go to Jim Neary's Bait and Tackle on Facebook. You see the tournament schedule of what's coming up. Their big date is May 18th. They're going to do a hog roast and everything. It's a fun time. You got to come up. If you're in the East Coast, come on up to Southern Pennsylvania in May. You'll absolutely love it. HMG Beverage. We actually have a new Our sister company has a new decaf that's out, and I shamefully have not been pushing it out on the platform, but people have known about it. And here's the thing: we need a name. We need a name for this new decaf. And some of the names that we've got was Decaf Delight, Blissful Beans, Luna Soul, Peaceful Serenity, Black Cloud, and Muddy Bean Water. have been a few of the names. So I gotta post this and you guys pick. I know decaf. A lot of you guys are not. We've the amount of requests that we've had for decaf beans. So I broke down and we got decaf. We actually got two. The other one is called Be Still. Is the other one that will complete our heroes line that we have. So yeah, right now what we have in stock, huge Brazilian Cerrado Kickstarter. Those are our two big ones right there. I see Lance is trying to get something free or a discount code. You know, if you order online, I've always said if you use HMG, you'll get a 10% discount code on it. So when you order online, go to hmgcoffee.com or hmgbeverage.com. Use promo code HMG. It's going to give you 10% off. So there you go. All right. Listen, far over my time limit for today, but I appreciate you guys jumping on as always. Make sure you check out our sponsors. I'm going to post them on the Facebook page, afterwards as well. Home Studio, I'm HMG Beverage. Go to hmgbeverage.com. Ops Lens, another media organization that we're looking forward to doing more stuff with in 2024. Please go check out our friends. And of course, I'm not wearing a jacket today, but JB Auto Clothiers. We are doing suit up events all over the country right now. And if you want to be in on that, you want a new suit, you want a new sport coat, maybe you need a tuxedo or custom shirt or even a custom tie. We do it all. Hit us up, follow us. We're not big yet on social media, but we're trying to grow that. jbautoclothiers.com, or follow us on Instagram and send us a direct message there at JB Auto Clothiers if you're interested in getting suited up. All right. So that being said, here's to March. We're going to have a great month. Next week, live from the desert. I'm going to be in Arizona next Friday. So stay tuned. No telling where I'm going to pop up. Have no clue yet, but I can tell you for sure it's going to be in much nicer weather. So that being said, guys, get out this weekend. Have some fun. Be safe out there. God bless you. God bless America. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.